this access would be for Dakota to come home and practice their culture whenever they wanted in these different areas, in these state parks, in these federal reserves, just the same way that the Ojibwe are able to. And in Sherburne County, there's 56 sites. Sherburne County does a little bit better job of protecting these sites, but not good enough. The Sherburne Wildlife Refuge, there's a whole lot of mounds there that are not labeled. And the next conversation when it comes to academia, when it comes to tribal leadership, when it comes to government entities is, and really not even government entities, because the government entities have already discovered this. And their interest is really history, where they didn't care about the culture, they documented what the culture and where it was. And that a lot of the times corroborates with what our elders are saying, what our winter count said. And once you combine the two, proof that we were here thousands of years ago. And these mounds on Sherburne National Wildlife Refuge are ours. And the Sherburne National Wildlife Refuge should be a place where Dakota can come and practice our rights. Last year, I had the wonderful opportunity of visiting Sherburne National Wildlife Refuge. And you can feel the energy. But the reality is, for me to harvest sage, sweetgrass, the different stuff that I got, it's up here on my shelf, I had to get a permit that any Minnesotan can get. And then when I stepped up and I said, I would like to practice wild rice, they said, no, unfortunately, you can't do that. I even bought a boat. Yeah, I even bought a canoe that was the right size, because in here in Minnesota, if you're going to harvest wild rice, you have to have, I believe, under a 15-foot, 3-foot wide. And then they tell me, unfortunately, your permit didn't say this. It said that you have rights to the plants on Sherburne, but not wild rice. And I said, why? And they said, Glyphwick, the Great Lakes Indian Wildlife Control, who can wild rice on Minnesota state and federal reserves. So they said you need to contact Glyphwick and you need to ask them what their policy is on their permits. I call Glyphwick. They tell me that I need to go to the state of Minnesota and get a permit. The state doesn't have a permit for the Federal Reserve, for the Sherburne Reserve. So that left a gray area or a no area for Dakota to ever harvest. Because technically speaking, in these areas, United States citizens will never be able to harvest. This area is protected for the wildlife, obviously, and for the rights of that treaty that I was talking about earlier. You remember? That 1837 treaty? That treaty is still being utilized to give Ojibwe rights to hunt, fish, harvest on these lands. But the Dakota don't have those rights. And this is not the fault of the Ojibwe. This is the fault of people brushing the Dakota to the side long ago. And narratives being utilized and pushed whichever way they needed to be for casinos to really just control Indian territory in Minnesota. That time is over. And a lot of leadership will have a problem with 43,000 Dakota coming home, but it's not like they'd be here all the time. I'm sure a lot of these Dakota have homes where they are now. This access would be for Dakota to come home and practice their culture whenever they wanted in these different areas, in these state parks, in these federal reserves, just the same way that the Ojibwe are able to in these federal reserves. And they'll start opening their doors to programming so that a group of Dakota from Standing Rock can come in a bus for 1 week and set up our teepees. Or we can build a lodge, an earth lodge. We can build an old Dakota home and we can start practicing our ways to see how we lived. So now we can continue that way of life. The Dakota weren't just in Minnesota, but the Dakota, this was the heart of where we lived.